Hi there, everyone. Welcome back to our last Fake Nerds watch for Lovecraft Country, for the foreseeable future, at least. This is the end of season 1 we were talking about. We missed another week. We decided to just put these into 2 because we were coming up way too close to the finale. And we're like, you know what? Let's just do one big haul-out conversation on it all. So we're here together. It's me, Sparkz Witty, with Ryan Eliopoulos.
Hola.
And Brandon T. McClure coming across the airwaves. And we are talking about episode 9, Rewind 1921, and episode 10, the finale, Full Circle. Before we dive into either of those, I do want to just give some thoughts because I caught up on the podcast episodes for the episodes before this.
Excellent.
I just want to talk about some things from there. In the episode I Am, the Amazons that Hippolyta goes to are the Tahomey Amazons, which I knew nothing about, and I started actually reading about and looking into. So they wanted it to be a combination between the Greek history of Hippolyta, which she is supposed to be hearkening to that, but also a connection to these Tahomey Amazons. Okay, which I thought was really cool. That there's a full background of shit I don't know about that I can now learn about because of that. Also in episode 8, Jigabobo, there's one of the hosts shared a different perspective on Christina's assault from what we were talking about, which I thought was valid and interesting to share, though I will say I kind of disagree, which is that that Christina is doing it out of appropriation of Black pain rather than I won't say that's the exact word, but I'm paraphrasing that's not the exact word that they said, but that what Christina is doing is kind of like a sham. It's trying to be part of it, but not able to actually resonate with it. That it's insincere. And this was from Ashley Ford, who is not the one of the writers on the show. She's just the host on the podcast. And I would push back against that and say that I favor much more our sentiment, where I think that it is Christina's sincere attempt in the best way that she possibly knows how to try to understand. But I can understand how, looking at it from the, I'm white, whatever. Yeah. But I did think it was interesting. There was a very different read talked about on the episode about the Christina scene from ours.
Yeah, I guess if you rewatch that scene, you could look at it in a lot of different ways. But I think, the way that episode was structured and the way that she ended up laughing and crying, it felt to me like she was trying to experience something so she can get closer to Ruby. Sure, that's what I felt. Yeah.
Just different takes on is that really justifiably enough, that kind of thing. Also, in the same episode, they talked about Diana representing the need for parents to be present, not just physically there, but actually present. There was a lot about not necessarily just Diana's parents, but the other adults around are there around Diana, but none of them are there for Diana. Yes. And I thought that was a very good point that they were bringing up about their Diana has lost a friend and none of them are really being actively there. Yeah. Montrose gets the closest.
Yeah. They're all dealing with their own stories, but she's also dealing with her own story.
Right.
And they're just they're too busy to notice, unfortunately.
And they also made a really good point that I just wanted to share, which is that when Diana screams after spitting on the police at the Topsy and Bop and Topsy and Flopsy.
Flopsy? I only know Topsy. Yeah.
After the two twin demons are there, she screams at them. It's because she just faced down the scariest demon she could, which is the police.
That's true.
Once you face the scariest monsters, those monsters seem sillier by nature, which I thought was an excellent point.
I guess I would understand that, but also I would push back on that saying they were terrifying, and I would probably piss myself.
They're definitely terrifying, but I can understand where the monster you've known your entire life, if you're able to spit in the face of that, you can take. You feel emboldened to take on a lot of things.
The ultimate evil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The point I was trying to make is she is a much stronger lady than I. I would probably just sit down and be like, Kate, guess I'm dying.
Jada Harris spitting on the cop apparently was improvised in the rehearsal process by Jada.
Oh.
She decided that she was going to spit on the cop and stand up like that, and I thought that was awesome.
Yep.
Okay. So let's get into Rewind 1921.
Does it start in a bedroom with a sick D?
Yes.
Cool. I got it right.
It has been 2 weeks for us.
Hey, I can't remember anything.
It is now known by the group that Letty is invulnerable because she gave the pages up, the copies of the pages, because they were talking about what they could give to Christina in exchange, and they can't give her that. But Atticus wants to bring in Christina to save Di. Ruby says, well, she'll do it for me. So they bring Christina into the room to help save Diana.
Diana has been transforming slowly into her monsters.
Yes, something we didn't see. We saw her arm messed up, but now we see that she is slowly becoming like the girls.
She's got the lipstick and the hair.
Yes. In order for Christina to give any kind of aid, she requires that Atticus must come willingly to the autumnal equinox at Artem, and then she'll help Diana. But there's limited amounts that they can do without the Book of Names. So ultimately, they have to come up with a plan to get the Book of Names.
The last time anybody saw the book was in Tulsa.
1921.
Christina learns that Lancaster was part of this, that Lancaster was injured by the Shoggoth.
Yeah, we see him die.
It was a Shoggoth. She hears that it was an explosion.
Yes, like a gas explosion.
Yes.
Good cover up.
So she immediately leaves and changes into William to go gloat to Lancaster's death.
Who I assumed he was dead, but now we get to see what happened to him. He's slowly dying, and they keep trying to save him with magic, but he's too far gone to get saved.
Right.
That's what the body parts were for, is to like switch him out.
Well, what's so interesting is you see them like they replace his chest again, but it keeps like exploding again. So like it's the act of being killed by the Shoggoth is irreversible.
Yeah, it's like you were killed by magic, so it forfeits your being alive that way.
Yeah.
Right.
It's kind of like a cool idea.
Christina has a great line there as William, where she says, "Every time I transform back, William dies all over again."
Yeah,
which I thought was an interesting sentiment to share.
It's kind of her doing it in a way too, which is weird.
Yeah. So she went there as William to watch this man die, which I thought was a nice this really was a personal problem. She very much cared about William, and she went with his face to watch this. I thought was a powerful statement. Montrose is feeling guilty for what's happened to Diana, and ultimately wishing that he had taken the bullet all the way back at the beginning of the show instead of George
in episode 2. Yeah.
Montrose. Then they're discussing that they need the blood of Diana's closest living relative to help. And Montrose, so everyone's saying Montrose needs to do it. Montrose is the closest living relative, and Montrose now has to reveal that Atticus may be George's son.
Yeah,
because that would make Atticus her closest living relative.
Yeah,
but they're not sure.
But they're not sure. And that sends Atticus off. He is very broken up. He hates to know that all that time he was wanting George to be his father. He now knows that George may have in fact been his father, and he felt like he could put up with everything Montrose put on him because that's his father. You have to love your father through that kind of thing, and all that might have been for naught. Really disrupts Atticus in a big way.
Yeah.
Hippolyta returns just in time to help, so she can now help give her blood because she is the closest living member
with her dope hair.
And so they
she doesn't have blue hair yet.
Oh, sorry.
No, not yet.
Oh, I'm still thinking of new episodes.
Yeah, they attempt to exercise it out of her. I'll be honest, I kind of lost a little bit of the narrative. A lot of things were happening about why this didn't work. But it didn't, so they have to go back to 1921 to get the Book of Names to make sure it works, with Hippolyta guiding them.
Hippolyta reveals that she was on, Earth 56?
Something like that.
She was like, it's a multiversal machine, and I was on Earth 56 doing all sorts of cool shit.
She does say, I spent 200 years in infinite possibilities with infinite wisdom, and I came back to use all of them to save my daughter.
Yeah. She's Hippolyta, these like the next 2 episodes is just like almost a different character, and it's like who she should have been from the beginning. It's like she was this like kind of like trapped housewife, and like now she's she is this like genius explorer, and I'm like,
well, and in many ways, like what the show is saying, like who she should have been all along.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, exactly.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's really great. Ruby and Letty have a scene where they're discussing the dangers of Christina because Letty doesn't trust her and knows that Ruby is attached to her. But Ruby more or less is brushing this off. When they have that conversation, we learn that the groundskeeper is in fact in a coma. So is William, that she has to keep him that way. Christina tells her more about how the magic works. And Christina is directly confronted by Ruby about her feelings. And Ruby wants to know, because of the conversation with Letty, if she'll kill Atticus. And she says Atticus was always going to end up back at Artem. The only variable in the plan was the time, and now Ruby is a variable she didn't see coming, and she admits that. Ruby wants a promise that Letty won't be harmed.
I think this goes back to, real quickly, I think this goes back to what we were talking about in the last episode, that Christina does care for Ruby.
Yes, this is very much leading into that Christina all but says it, because she says that you were a variable I didn't expect. You know, like this was a sincere, this was something real happened between them.
And then doesn't, like, after she's like, hey, as long as you protect Letty, it's all good. She basically doesn't care if Atticus dies.
No, she doesn't. She flat out says, promise you won't hurt Letty, because she wants the magic, because it's in the same moment that she appears, I believe that is the implication, that she lets the groundskeeper die, Hilary Davenport, and says, always pictured myself as a redhead.
Yes.
Which means she wants a different white woman.
Yes.
To be changing into.
So I know what happens in episode 10 now, but at this point I was like, oh, I feel like Ruby kind of switched sides. She's definitely, at least, like, she's given Letty so many chances, and just like, even though Letty is doing her best to be a better person, she keeps letting her sister down.
I think that the other part of it is that, like, Ruby is a person who has defined herself by being selfless for other people, and has a sister who has defined herself by being selfish.
Yeah.
And for once is choosing to be selfish.
Yeah.
Even though the scale is grander than it's ever been, even though it's putting things her sister wants at odds with her, this is still the first time where Ruby's really going, I'm not doing something for you, I'm doing something that I want.
Treating myself.
Yes, exactly. Which is something that, as we've learned in the show, Ruby hasn't really pushed that hard on Letty.
Yeah.
But she is in this case. So there's a weird, like, you know, she's letting Atticus die. It's like super morally not great, but also, like, you kind of understand where the contentious relationship has led her to this point. And she's not only is she seduced by magic, but she's seduced by feelings for Christina William. She seems to have genuine attraction to her.
Yeah.
Real complicated. But that was my read, is that she kills the groundskeeper in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
That she lets her die from the coma, because she lowers. We don't really get any final statement on that, other than, like, her turning off the machine and saying, I always picture myself as a redhead, which is another big thing, because in a sense, Ruby just killed a person. Yeah. Now, granted, that person was never going to get up.
Yeah.
ever again. But it's still like a thing she did that, like, is a little, whoa, Ruby, you went there.
Yeah.
Montrose is knocking back some moonshine.
Oh, he's getting,
my man.
He's getting
while thinking of Atticus's pain. You seem perplexed, Brandon.
Sorry, I just had it's not related to this. I just had a thought of our other show that's not related to this. I need to write it down before I forget it. Let's go. Keep going.
Okay. Montrose tells Letty what Atticus knows from the future, which means that he tells Letty that Atticus knows that she's pregnant, that all that is already clear. Hippolyta gets the machine up and running, the multiverse machine, and they're going back to Tulsa with Hippolyta running the current through pieces in her arms.
Those things that she got injected by.
That was cool.
Super God lady.
Oh, do you want to know her name, by the way?
Oh, I know her name because of our friend.
Yes.
Our friend
Beyonce. Not
no
Beyonce.
kidding.
Beyond say.
Yeah.
Wow.
Say, like, say la vie, but then beyond dot say. I'm like, that's cute.
That is the name of our large afro-haired lady.
Somebody, when he posted that, he's like, I didn't know that was Beyonce. And I'm like, wait, that's Beyonce Knowles? And it's like, that's the character's name. I'm like, okay, it's not It's not as big as I thought.
Yeah. I was like, I think I'd recognize her. She did not look familiar.
Some good prosthetics.
So Montrose Atticus is not thrilled about Montrose at all on any level, obviously. Montrose is not in a good place, and he hesitates before going through. And there's a whole lot of like, yes, you need Montrose to like know where you're going, but holy crap, like under normal circumstances, this would be a bad thing to put Montrose through. This is horrendously traumatic. And so his hesitation before he goes through the portal is 100% understood. But Montrose does eventually jump through.
Yeah, going back to
it's
experiences in history. Yeah,
it's what they didn't have a word for it yet, but it's
PTSD.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So they don't know what he's dealing with, but he's having to confront something that was so traumatic for him that he's still got trauma from it.
I wouldn't even, just because I'm not 100% sure of the language, I think PTSD wouldn't directly apply if he is going back to this is extreme, but like, even if you were going back to like the location, I think there's a different word for that kind of trauma.
Yeah.
When you're literally revisiting an event, whether you're doing it through like psychosis therapy or physically going to the location where your trauma happened. I think there is a different term for what happens to you trauma wise when you do that than PTSD. But I know the route you're on and I know what you mean. And 100%. They have to find the Book of Names, which is in Dora's family home. Montrose is reliving his history as they walk through.
Real quickly, can we just mention the fact, like, how crazy is it that when we first saw a trailer for the show, we didn't think that time travel would actually not be the most extreme thing to happen?
Yeah.
It's a wild show for sure. Yeah.
Like they had multiverse travel, and then they were like, now time travel.
Yeah, back to one of America's worst periods. It's like, man, you're going. It's all the places,
and definitely to connect it to another show, Watchmen, and back to the same event in Tulsa.
There's a whole lot of stuff about the prom being that night. That's real. That is a real thing that they talk about on the podcast, that they found that out and they were like, we have to explore that.
There's a couple things that I'm sure you'll bring up that are real, like real people's names and real businesses and stuff. That
I do not have the whole list, but
I'll talk about it when we get to that point.
Atticus has zero patience for what Montrose is going through, his trauma, and he says, when we're done with this, we're done. Which Montrose, again, like in such a bad way, this is, I understand Atticus's pain, but this is the worst time to be saying something like that to Montrose.
Yeah.
And it slowly does become clear to Atticus that that's the case as it goes on. But like that is a rough moment that is not helping Montrose deal with this at all. Cause this is a man who clearly, like Michael K. Williams is doing a great performance because he does not look well.
Yeah.
They come upon Montrose being beaten by his dad.
Out in the front yard, just like out in daylight.
And Montrose, even now watching it, says, I deserved it. And it's Letty who has to say, no one deserves this.
Yeah,
this is out of control. Dora comes out and stands between him and George. Between them, and George watches his drunk father stumble back into the house. Dora scolds George for not being there. And adult Montrose says she had no idea how much George really did to help him, which I thought was a really sweet little thing, like getting to see that relationship that we've heard about after all this time. While they were watching, Montrose disappeared. And the assumption is that Atticus thinks that he's going to go and tell George to not get hit by the bullet, or to tell his younger self to not take the bullet, and change that event in the future. So Letty and Atticus have to split up. Atticus has to go stop him because they can't mess with any major events. They can only take the book. And Letty has to, because they very specifically have gone back to the time of their Earth. That was a important thing, that they weren't traveling to an alternate history. It is their history. Hippolyta had to put in very specific coordinates for it.
And they stress like, hey, we can't change anything,
because if they change anything, they change their reality.
I really I really enjoy stories that do what it is revealed that this episode is, which is predestination.
Mm-hmm.
They were always meant to go back into this moment.
Right.
That's why the book is missing in Tulsa. It's because they went to go get it.
That is my favorite thing. If you're doing a time story and your intention is that it is a closed loop, which means anything in the past affects the future, then that means it must always happen, regardless of before the egg discussion. Like, it means it must always be for the timeline to stay constant. So those things must work in conjunction with each other.
Yeah.
Letty goes to find the book, and as Letty's on her way, the racists attack.
Oh, jeez.
The racists are coming. The racists are coming.
I mean, they are. And Letty runs to the protection of George and Dora's families, where they want to make plans for a counterattack.
Yeah.
Montrose, meanwhile, is found by Atticus, and he tells Atticus at the park that he's actually there to save a boy named Thomas. Montrose had buried his name in his memory, and he is falling apart over not being able to save him. He has the line where he says, "Thomas won't mean much. He's just the first in a long list of sacrifices I made to be your father."
Oh, that's so rough.
He says he called Thomas a faggot as a kid, denying and lying about his own nature.
He's saying it as we see it happening. So he's like, we're hearing Montrose's recounting while we're seeing the actual event happen.
Yes, exactly.
That was really cool.
Yeah. And Montrose talks about, he ties this into how all these things, he was certain, and it doesn't really matter, but he was certain that Atticus was his son, and it doesn't matter to him what would be the truth, because that's what he wanted. He wanted Atticus to be his son.
Yeah.
Which is really strong and honest. This is a very emotional scene. I thought this was super well done.
Yeah.
And Montrose.
This scene is so good. They nail the emotional beats of the sequence very well. Especially Michael K. Williams.
Yes. They're both doing a great job. Montrose is trying so hard to convince him that this can be allowed because this wouldn't change a lot of things. But Atticus insists we can't change that because you might not have me. None of that would happen.
Yeah.
But there is supposed to be someone intervening.
We'll talk about that. So Letty has to lie to Dora's sister that everything's going to be all right. She is searching for the book, and she gets caught by the matriarch of the house, which is Hattie. And she
immediately knows.
Drops, because she saw her shoes when she came in. Yeah. So she drops all pretense and says, "I need the book of names." And she knows about the family birthmark, and she's trying to justify to her, "I'm from the future and I need this. This is for our family. Your great grandson. His baby is in me." All that. Hattie works out because of this. If she came back in time to get the book, then they all die there.
Yeah.
And Hattie understands that.
It's gotta happen.
God, that was also such a powerful sequence, watching her burn.
Yes. So the house starts to burn, and she can't change anything about it. So she gives Letty the book, and Letty. And Letty is before she gives the book, she's saying, you have to just accept this. You can't change it. You can't save your family. None of it can change. And so Letty, because she has the invulnerability, stands there with her and says, "The fire's not going to hurt me, so I'm going to stay." And they pray together as the house and Hattie burn, and Letty holds the book.
That was rough to watch. That's a rough sequence to watch, that woman burning.
Strong sequence. Strong sequence.
Yeah.
I really like that.
Geez. When did you realize did you guys realize it was closed loop earlier or?
Well, I suspected it when we were talking about the book, when she has the realization, you can't, if you came here, then we all die here. And I went, well, the book is magic. So theoretically, if they never found any remains of the book at the building, it's because the book was never even there.
Yeah. That was my theory too. I think I kind of went into this knowing, went into the moment they go through the portal. I think I was kind of I think this might be a closed loop, but it wasn't until that that they were like, guy swinging a bat like Jackie Robinson came and saved it. I was like, oh, that's gonna be Atticus.
Yeah. I think what helped a lot is that story doesn't come up a bunch throughout the season. It's not like they tried to lead you into connecting it. I'm glad that it's not heavy-handed in that. It's something that is known that there's a story they all know, but we don't know the details until this episode. Yeah. And I thought that worked to the advantage of the story. I'm glad they did it that way. And it's not like, episode 2 or 3 where we're talking about George after he's died and we're talking about, that night or anything like that.
A mysterious stranger came and
Yeah. So you're anticipating like that to be important.
Yeah.
Montrose is held up by Atticus as they go through together the moment of Thomas being shot.
As the war commences, as the white people
and Montrose says before Thomas gets shot, when they get scared of the racist, that when he grabs his hand to protect him, that's the first time they ever held hands. Was that moment out of fear. Montrose is reciting the story of that night of the trio when George and Dora show up and fighting, and they slowly build up to that moment where it's revealed that then some mysterious stranger showed up and saved us with a bat, and then Montrose says something's wrong.
He's not showing up.
He's not showing up, and Atticus repeats the line that is said by them because they say it in unison, which is the "I got you, kid," which is the same line Jackie Robinson said in the very first episode when he hit Cthulhu with the bat. Is "I got you, kid," which was really nice. And so they realize that Atticus is the person because there's a baseball bat right in front of him. So
There's
Atticus,
very specific. It's Harry Potter 3. Never mind. Sorry.
So Atticus picks up the bat and he beats the crap out of the racists while Letty is burning in the house. A really nice note, they noted it on the podcast too, it was really refreshing to see a lady racist. You usually just see a lot of white men in groups like that.
That's true.
But there is very prominently a white woman who's part of this.
And she got her ass kicked too.
Yep.
I love it. I love watching racist white people get their ass kicked with a bat.
It's really nice.
It's satisfying. So Atticus wrecks them and saves the kids and says the famous line.
Gotcha, kid. Stares into his daddy's eyes.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Atticus and Montrose get back to the portal, and Atticus goes through as he sees Hippolyta struggling and gets to the other side, and Hippolyta is having a hard time.
Keeping the portal open, or with her like crystal blades, just like keeping it open like an X-Men character. It's dope.
Meanwhile, Montrose
just floating up into the air, and her hair is turning color. Jeez,
that comes up in just a second. Yeah, Hippolyta goes up into the air, her hair turns blue. That's
she
something.
Gets like white eyes and like she's like foaming at the mouth, like
foaming, like convulsing,
like doing something to her physically.
Yeah.
Montrose doesn't go immediately through the portal though. He looks back through the window at the devastation of the Tulsa massacre, and he starts telling stories about all the people who are being lost.
Yeah.
Where you wanted to touch on?
Oh, I don't have any specific names, but I watched the video where they're like every person that he named and all the businesses, and like this black doctor was the best black surgeon in the United States, and like these were all real people who died, and all real businesses that got destroyed. And I'm like, it sucks that it takes television to like bring awareness to this, but it's really nice that like it does give us the chance to like educate people who don't know about it.
Right.
It's kind of like the win and lose situations like this. Like we should know about this by now, but
it's just one of those things where you look at it, and I didn't know about Tulsa until Watchmen. And I know we've heard that story multiple times. It's awful to know that there was this massive hate-filled disaster that was just swept under the rug.
Right.
And honestly, you kind of feel betrayed.
Yeah.
Because like if I had known this growing up, it would have changed my perspective of the United States.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's the whole thing. That's why they don't put it into our history books or anything. I was talking to him as we were watching it happen that I'm like, I can't even imagine living in Tulsa and finding out when Watchmen came out that this happened. Yeah. I can't even imagine living in that town and not knowing this.
The town,
but that's what happened to people. And that's horrifying.
And you look at like what Watchmen did was open the door for other people, for people to be like, hey, historian, here's a lot more black communities that were thriving, that were incredible, that were all just wiped away. One of them was in Central Park, was wiped away for Central Park.
I mean, like of a similar note, Brandon, you and I come from Pacific Grove, and like a whole long time ago, a history that it likes to sweep away is that they burned down an entire Chinese fishing village there in 1906, and they hide that shit.
That long ago.
No, and they hide that shit real well. And the reason that they get away with it so easily is because nobody was killed, but they were all forced out of their homes and everything. The whole place burned down, and then continue an annual tradition that perpetuates appropriation of their culture,
which is Lanterns.
Yeah, that's the paper I wrote last semester that's getting published was about that.
Nice.
It's ridiculous, but you're right.
Well, real quickly on that one, Sparkz said, like, we have a direct heritage towards it from where we grew up. There's this whole event called the Feast of Lanterns where a bunch of white people pretend to be Chinese princesses. And so, like, and they still do it. And now the other thing is, Pacific Grove is historically and is currently a headquarters for the KKK.
Oh, nice. Awful.
Yep.
So just that sucks.
In California?
In California?
Yeah.
That's a bummer.
Haven't you seen the tweet where it's just like everyone thinks that California is this blue state, but outside of the Bay Area and Los Angeles, it's basically Texas.
I just want to believe that it's one big blue baby, but it's really not.
The thing is, it's ridiculous because, like, coming from the Monterey area is filled to the brim with both liberals and conservatives, and like they're constantly like warring their ideologies against each other silently.
It's like the internet.
Anyway, back to the show.
That's our own history with racism.
I thought that was a wonderful moment of Montrose doing that, of him looking out, telling these stories. I was like, this is beautiful punctuation of this.
I also thought it was a wonderful moment with Letty walking the streets in the middle of the street with the bombs coming down.
Yes, I was just about to bring that up. Yeah, Letty walking through, carrying the book, living through the pain that is happening. The final song that's going on while that moment is happening, while Montrose is reciting the names, while Letty's marching through the street, that song was written for the show, for this moment.
That's a really good song.
Megan found that out because she wanted to look it up after we were done, and they wrote it in about April, I think is what she said. So it was a later edition, and that it is very much meant to tribute to Tulsa, but also to the George Floyd moment that was happening while they were making the song. So that was a lot on their minds. There's conversations about that. You can look it up. But I thought that was a really nice thing. They do ultimately get back through the portal all safely. And that's the end of that episode.
I thought Hippolyta was 100% dead.
I didn't think she was dead.
And you know what? Our phase. I was worried that she was dead.
Yeah. I was worried it was going to take a toll on her and like she wouldn't be able to do a bunch of things anymore. For some reason. Like, I didn't think she'd be dead, but I thought like it cut her off from like her greatest abilities or something. It taxed her brain too much or something.
Yeah.
But it ultimately turned out fine, which is good. So that's that episode. I thought that episode was beautiful, fantastic.
I agree.
What a whopper of television.
Is episode not? Is this 10 episodes that we've done?
Yeah.
That was episode 9.
No, I mean, yeah, there's 10. Okay, so it was episode 9. I got you.
Yeah. I can only imagine like the cultural history classes that will reference this show, that will start showing clips from this show to talk about this moment, because Watchmen did a great job, but I think this is a more direct conversational piece about that night, and I think that's going to really land with a lot of people.
This show is standing on the shoulders of Watchmen.
Oh, for sure.
It Watchmen, and I don't think this was on purpose. In fact, I'm sure it wasn't. But the fact that Watchmen was able to introduce audiences to Tulsa in the way that it did allows this show to go even further and really show the devastation that happened in that moment.
That's a good point, because Misha Green is on the last episode of the podcast talking about the final episode, and they talk about that this show they were working on. Misha Green was crafting this show for 3 years, and then with other people over time. And I can imagine that like Tulsa was always part of it. It was, but I can totally imagine HBO having pushback against it before Watchmen opened the door a little bit.
Yeah.
which is a bummer because in some ways, like it's like not that like that entire team on Watchmen was white, they weren't, but it's a white showrunner. It's Damon Lindelof opening that door so that Black people can tell that story.
Yeah.
Well, I don't mean to give Watchmen too much credit, but it's a great show. But without Watchmen coming out, I don't think Lovecraft Country could craft this episode in the way that it was crafted.
No, for sure. That I'm agreeing with you. Like, I think that the artists themselves would have wanted to do this. I think Lindelof, and his team both wanted to do even more. And if that hadn't sold as well, I don't know that HBO would have allowed them to go this far.
Yeah.
And I think we're kind of saying the same point on that. But for sure, it's I'm glad that is the case. It's just crazy to think about.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I'm just glad that there have been 2 major projects that have brought so much attention to it.
Yeah, all within
and really opened a lot of conversation in minds, especially at a time. Misha Green talks about it on the podcast episode. They also have Journey Smollett on the episode. The last episode's a really good episode of the podcast. Misha Green talks about that. I lost it for a second. Sorry.
About something dope, I'm sure.
What were you talking about specifically?
Watchmen, Tulsa.
Just how it all came about.
Yeah.
That'll come back to me. I don't want to misquote her, so I'll come back to it.
It's time for Full Circle.
Full Circle.
It's now the last episode 10.
So it's time to read from the Book of Names.
Yes.
To save Di. Atticus and Letty end up crashing, and they end up in a vision of burning building inferno. At first, it's the manor for Atticus.
Yes. Sorry, we got a cat chewing on cords. Being a bee.
Just being a problem.
Just being a prob.
And so Atticus sees Hannah. A vision of her in the manor.
Some people have been saying this is some type of like astral plane thing because like they're things
for sure
that people recognize and they keep going back to it. Like at least for Atticus.
Yeah.
Oh, well, even she says like I created the space.
Yeah.
For our family.
That's pretty dope.
And then she was like, it was always on fire before I realized what it was. By the way, that fire effect is awesome. Do you know how hard CGI fire is? And to make it to go in reverse?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So they're in this astral plane that Hannah has created. Letty is also in there, but she's in a different location of it with Hattie.
Yes.
Hannah and Hattie are both explaining the history at the same time. It's bouncing between the two. Hannah has always had nightmares of the mansion, and she put a spell to bind the Book of Names, which they're now unbinding. Hannah says fire she recognizes as her rage, and she sees magic now as a gift to pass on to their people. Hattie says that Letty must protect the Book of Names, and that her mission is going to be different from Atticus's. And she encourages her not to be like Hannah, not to shut that out, shut out the Book of Names and all that. Atticus is told by Hannah that he's going to save them all. Atticus is teleported to another part of that astral plane to a fiery vision of his home.
I just wrote down the "you will save them all" line because I wanted to bring that up.
Yeah. And he sees Dora.
Mama.
This is a beautiful moment. I thought this was done super well. Atticus is so very much I think John Walter Bridges, is that his name?
John.
No, I said it wrong.
No, I'll figure it out.
I think he does a great job of seeming like a child again.
Yeah.
In the arms of his mom.
Yeah. Oh, he's immediately crying because like when's the last time he saw her?
Yeah. He has the moment where he lays down into her lap. And he just tells her how much he doesn't. Jonathan Majors, thank you. Don't know where I'm pulling John Walter Bridges out of. Jonathan Majors did a really great job.
These last couple episodes, I feel like everyone's just on like cry alert at all times. Like everyone's just super emotional. I'm like, man, everyone here is such a good actor. Oh
yeah. Dora is there. He says he doesn't want to die. And Dora tries to ease his pain about it. She believes that they don't really have a choice. It's kind of just making a decision about what you're willing to make a sacrifice for. She also acknowledges that she resisted the idea that Montrose and George were both parts of her soul, and that both parts of the best of both of them are in Atticus.
That's so sweet.
Letty is learning from Hattie how to read the book when Atticus and Nora join them. And so they work together to save Diana, focusing on her. And in the real world, she fully recovers and wakes up.
Except for arm.
Her arm is done.
It's a gross arm.
Which was her drawing arm.
Her dominant
you
arm.
You were totally right, Ryan, when you made that connection that she was the one-armed lady.
I mean, it's just like, you tell me there's a mysterious one-armed lady, and then one of our main characters loses an arm. I'm just like, I know how I scripts, guys.
Mysterious robot-armed lady.
Yeah.
So there begins an argument about what to do with Christina's plan and how to counter it. And they all kind of get on the same page. We learned that they've been keeping the Black Shoggoth in the basement.
Oh yeah, Atticus puts his hand on it. Yeah.
Ashley C. Ford on the podcast also refers to it as the Black Shoggoth. And when Journey Smollett's on there, she's like, "Did she just called it the Black Shoggoth?" Couldn't believe it. Anyway, Letty and I wrote Leticus because I was trying to abbreviate.
That's their ship name.
So it's Letty and Atticus. Leticus are headed underwater to the labyrinth.
By the way, Leticus is a good name for just anything.
It is. They work a spell around the central room that we saw earlier in the season.
So cool. The music in the sequence is so cool, and everything that happened to the getting ready for battle is awesome.
Yes. So they summon Titus Braithwaite.
Yeah, some old white dude shows up and he's like, "What the hell's going on?"
Yeah.
Why are there two black people near me?
And also Hannah also appears in this moment. Titus is able to break away for a moment, and he immediately appears in front of Christina, who crashes through a car.
She goes flying.
Yeah. He is there to tell her what's happening, that they have the book, but he gets interrupted and pulled back. Atticus stabs Titus and begins cutting into him, taking a chunk of his flesh away, while Hattie, Hannah, Dora, and Letty are chanting around the circle. Titus's body then vanishes, and their spirits one by one are evaporated away as part of the spell.
Yeah. By the way, Letty and Atticus speaking the language of Adam is really cool.
Yes.
I like how fluent they are.
That whole moment was very like, oh, they got this magic shit down right now.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Hippolyta is visiting Diana, and she says, "I'm really sorry I wasn't here. I went away to make Orythia Blue real, what you always imagined I could be."
Yeah. And
Diana's doesn't care about that. She only cares that she wasn't there for her.
Yeah, she doesn't care what the excuse is, unfortunately. She'll forgive her later, I think.
Yeah, we'll get there. They want to bind Christina and reverse the spell on her. And Hippolyta is on board with Montrose and Leticus to do it. Christina shows up as they're discussing this and wants to talk to Atticus alone, but he says she can do it in front of his whole family. And so she says this was never personal, which obviously they don't feel that
Montrose
way.
Is like, bullshit.
Yeah. Christina now knows that they have the Book of Names, and she wants it. And she says that if they give it to her, she'll find another way and she'll leave the family alone forever.
I promise.
Atticus denies her this. And
just
so
want to point you guys down to the bar on the bottom.
And so Christina, disappointed with this, removes the invulnerability that's on Letty.
Yeah.
Dick move. They're a little frazzled by this, and they go back to Letty's home, kind of broken up about it. And Atticus calls out to Gia. And he goes to meet her at the hotel she's staying at, where she's being hit on by a white dude.
Oh God.
And she has the fantastic line where she says, would you be willing to die to fuck me?
And he's like, see you later.
Yeah, and he bounces.
This goes back to what we were talking about, I think in episode 8. She show up in 8?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
When we're talking, we talked about it, we're speculating whether or not she is still the Nine-Tailed Fox, whether or not she did take her 100 soul.
And the answer is
turns out Turns out, no, she is still the nine-tailed fox. Or she took the 100th soul and she's still
right. It doesn't mean she didn't take the 100th soul. She just is the Kumiho.
Yeah.
She seems to be of her own free will on some level. We don't really know how that works out. Yeah. What we do know is that Atticus arrives and he admits that what they had was real.
And that doesn't ever it doesn't fully go away.
Yeah.
You learn to live with it.
And he apologizes for his response to her arrival.
She lost her mother.
She lost her mom. Atticus says that she doesn't understand what she's really feeling right now in that moment, and he explains that that's grieving.
Yeah,
that's what happens
even
when you
monsters
lose.
Can feel.
Yeah, when you lose family, and he told her that he understands now that she is part of his family, that they are bonded, that there is something they have gone through that has connected them. And Jia says that the Mudong told her she's destined to end up in the darkness. And Atticus says that she's the person who reminded him that they always have a choice about what kind of monsters they can be, or if they are monsters at all.
Yeah.
And they kind of connect over that. And I thought this was really, really well done, because I didn't feel like it was trying to tell us a romantic story about Atticus and Jia, but it was something about an understanding of a shared history of trauma.
Yeah.
Jadicus?
Jadicus. Ruby and Letty go to visit their mom's grave, and Letty reveals that the reason she wasn't at her funeral was because she was in jail.
Oh boy.
Letty tells Ruby that their mother wasn't real family, and she understands that now because she understands what real family is and why they're there for you. So Letty reveals the plan and that they need a part of Christina's body, and she wants Ruby to help her get it.
I need your help.
Ruby, stop it. Sorry, she's messing with wires.
No.
Ruby, stop it.
Ruby.
Ruby shows Letty that she is, in her belief, still getting family wrong. And I think there's a reasonable argument here that she says I can understand that from your perspective, you've learned a bunch and you're changing how you handle family. But to me, this is the exact same old thing where you come and ask me to give up something to help you.
Yeah.
That it's just about you and what you want.
So,
right. No, and so she's not convinced that things are really that different. And Letty says that there's more she needs to tell her. We don't really learn what that is. But Ruby hesitates and they stay in the cemetery to talk about whatever that is.
Yeah.
She just loves wires.
Sorry. Hippolyta shows Diana her Arithia Blue comic that she drew, and says she learned from an artist named Arufa, I believe, which is the person who actually drew that comic. Di says,
looks like a dope, actual, like a real comic.
Yeah. Diana says she won't be able to draw again, and Hippolyta shows her what we would assume is an elaborate lab from the sound of it.
Yeah.
And is where Diana will end up getting a robotic arm.
100%. There's like a cave full of gizmos and doodads and beakers.
We didn't touch on it, but Hippolyta has her big, beautiful Arithia blue hair now, and she looks great.
Yeah. It looks really good on that actress.
Yeah. It's a good look. Ruby meets with Christina, and Christina is explaining more about how magic works to her.
Ruby.
Including their potion spell and about how it has excuse me,
a sneeze in it.
Part of themselves in it. It has part of Ruby in it. It has part of Christina in their potions. Ruby reassures her that she is with her and kisses her, which is the first time we've seen intimacy between them in their female form.
And doesn't Ruby ask, like, you ever or doesn't Christina ask?
Christina asks if have you ever, and she's like, says no.
Like kiss.
I feel bad. Can I just real quickly? I feel bad for Christina a little bit in this situation.
Yeah, I do too. I think you're meant to have an amount of sympathy for her.
Knowing what we know towards the end of the episode, what actually happened to Ruby, and then what happens after we leave them, I kind of feel bad that Christina was played like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think this even goes back to just other things we've seen from Christina, that Christina is not necessarily a horrible person. She's just willing to kill Atticus to get what she wants, which isn't a great thing.
Seems pretty bad.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, like, like there's not a
like
punishing maliciousness nature to her. She's much more kind and innocent.
And
I also do
in a lot of respects.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Unfortunately, if Atticus does it willingly, like, is she really the bad guy if he does it he does it not against his will?
Right.
Well, I believe her when she says that with the Book of Names we can find an alternative to me killing you.
I do too. I think that the thing is, and we get into it at the end of the episode, so we'll just mention it here, but we'll talk about it in depth later. Is that Atticus at that point has already decided that what he cares about is making magic available to all Black people and locking white people out of it. And because he's already made that call, that's why he won't do it. Because he can only do that with the Book of Names.
Yeah.
And he's decided that that's going to be the family legacy, family heritage he wants to pass on to his kid. Because otherwise, I agree with you. I think that is a deal that would have ultimately saved him and them a lot of pain, that Christina would have held to her word, probably would have found a different way to do it that didn't cause killing Atticus, and she would have left them alone.
Yeah.
There was a path where she could have been on their side. Yeah.
That didn't happen.
No, it did not. Atticus and Letty are together for him getting baptized.
Yeah.
And she's expressing, even though he doesn't really believe, but he's doing it for her. This is a very important thing to her. She is saying she could have seen faith in herself rather than chasing it in all her other sources that she did. She wishes she'd found it a different way, which has been a nice arc for Letty across the show. Yeah. Atticus looks back at the home of the travel guide where we have the entire gang together, including Gia, in this really nice moment where he just gets to see what he's living for, what he's fighting for, and everyone that loves and would fight for him.
And yeah, everyone
I really like let's get the gang together moments. I really like it when seasons end with like, hey, we're all here now. Let's all go get the bad guy.
Right.
I do too.
I think everybody loves the assemble moment. They are preparing to go when Ruby arrives and brings a vial of Christina's potion, and Ruby comes with them, giving a hug to. Sure, but I mean, like, in the moment, it is Ruby. And Ruby goes with them, and she gives the vial, and so they all go together and they sing Shaboom.
This is my favorite thing in the whole episode, and maybe in the whole show, is everybody there in that car singing that song together. And even though we know that it is not Ruby now, what we know now towards, I still love that moment of all the, even Montrose is doing it.
It's probably like the happiest everyone's been in like the whole.
I would argue, including Christina. I would argue that, like, what Christina says about that moment, because she doesn't just ignore it. When she reveals that she is Christina, she says that was a really nice moment.
Yeah,
I valued something in that.
The one time she's felt like a family presence in like this.
And she's like, I really wish you guys hadn't, tried to do this because that was really nice.
Yeah, there's a moment before this I forgot. Christina says like. Whoever she's talking to, she's like, well, what if this thing doesn't work? And she's like, well, I would have killed my whole family for nothing.
She said that to Ruby,
To Ruby, and I'm like,
she's like, what if it doesn't work? And she's like, then I'll have killed the last member of my family for nothing.
That's right.
So it's got to work.
Yeah.
The Shaboom moment is really, really nice. And I do think it speaks even more to like the Christina. There's a part of Christina that I think there's a lot of Christina that doesn't actually want to kill Atticus. She's just too consumed with wanting to get this spell done.
She's too far in.
Yeah.
You're at 90% of the test. You gotta finish it.
But there's a part of her that like would truly, truly rather have it any other way. Atticus consumes Titus's flesh.
Yeah, gross.
Unseasoned.
That dude,
now he's a cannibal.
If Atticus's fate wasn't sealed later, that could have sealed him with whatever disease he just
consumed. Yeah. And because that definitely wasn't refrigerated for those couple of days.
And he drinks the blood.
Yeah, and he drinks the Christina vial, and Atticus approaches the destroyed manor where Christina waits, theoretically, but the villagers all emerge and bring him in. The villagers who have just, I guess, been hanging around.
Just chilling.
Ruby and Letty are talking, and it's revealed that Christina is actually Ruby. Letty catches on.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Christina
I didn't see it coming at all. That Christina, that was Christina. When she's just like, when Ruby kind of catches on and is just like, I was really glad you said you're gonna help me at the grave site. And he's like, of course, your family. I'm like, oh no, Ruby.
Yeah, I only caught on the moment before Letty said that line, and I went, "Oh no!"
Yeah.
Oh no! And I wish I'd been thinking with all of my brain, because I realized in that moment that she says, that Ruby is dead, because of this, and I'm like, but if I was thinking with my entire brain, I'd be like, that's not possible.
Nope, she can't be because she is
because
Ruby.
You need her in a coma for the spell.
Yeah.
So that's impossible.
So thankfully, Ruby's at least just in a coma and not dead.
Right.
Well, we also later, when Gia does her thing, which we'll talk about later, but we also get a sense that a lot of what Christina was saying in that moment is not entirely true. She is telling she's telling Letty a lot of half truths.
Right. Yeah. Christina's playing the part of the bad guy that's going to end up killing Letty.
Yes.
Killing Letty.
Throwing her off the tower.
It's okay. She talks about how she liked the ride. Like we mentioned before. They realize they have come to a trap. Christina says that Ruby is dead, and the fight starts. Montrose and Gia and Hippolyta are fighting on the bridge. Meanwhile,
Hippolyta, who just recently learned how to fight like a badass.
Meanwhile, Christina as Ruby throws Letty off the side of the tower, and she crashes into the ground. And
I absolutely was definitely not worried at all.
Yeah.
I was for a moment because I bought Christina.
Yeah.
I bought Christina's sincerity, and I knew that Letty would have to live, but I didn't think in that way. I'll say.
Yeah, I thought she was dead. I will say I thought that we were looking at a second resurrection.
Yeah.
But I did think she died. I didn't think she was invulnerable again. I did think that that was a death that we just watched. And again, also not sure at that moment because I didn't want to know if this would be the end of the show for good or the end of a season. I'm like, if it's the end of the show, she could be dead.
Yeah.
Like 100%. It could end that way.
Because in the same episode, they bring up the idea of like Montrose says, well, you die you're dead in the future. Like that's only one of many possible futures. So I thought that was, so thinking back to that, I thought it was like, okay, if this show is done, then yeah, they could kill Letty, and that future that Atticus saw was not their future.
Right. Diana is reading that Lovecraft Country book in the car while a Shoggoth moves around her. Meanwhile, Christina, now back in her body, approaches Atticus, and she has the book of...
Looking nice, got a nice ball gown, ready to kill some people.
She has the book of names with her, so Atticus knows that something has happened and something has gone wrong. She says because Ruby got involved, that their plan failed. It would have worked. Too bad that Ruby caught on and then got caught trying to take her vial, which is why this all happened.
Oops, yeah.
Atticus is in pain openly and clearly as she will not respond when he asks what happened to Letty.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Where's Letty? Diana is attacked by a Shoggoth when Atticus arrives. When Atticus's Shoggoth, arrives and attacks it back. Atticus's arms.
I like Diana's Shoggoth pet.
Yes.
Dude, if that was, I'll buy an action figure.
Atticus's arms are slit open.
Oh, they're like.
And the moment that happened, I was like, so he dead. Like
he's dying.
Done.
See, that's when I knew that Letty wasn't dead. Because I'm like, okay, that dude's definitely died. Right. There's something going to go on with Letty where they're not going to kill both their main characters in the next
Atticus is definitely done.
I had a feeling he was going to
die. Christina drinks from his blood.
She goes under his arm. Yeah. Gets like baptized in blood.
Right.
Metal as hell.
Letty reawakens. The invulnerability is back. And Atticus sees Letty as he is dying. And
at this moment, we don't know why or how she has the invulnerability spell on her.
No, we don't. Yeah. Atticus mouths the "I love you" as he is dying.
She mouths it back.
Yeah, and he dies, and Christina completes taking his essence from him, Letty comes up and stabs her from the back and chants at her, and Christina just tells her to quit and give up, and it's done, while a black swirling tornado appears in the sky, bolting back from Christina.
Yeah.
Going towards the moon.
Right. Gia understands
darkness.
Watching this, that what she needs to do is connect Christina and
Atticus.
The darkness, and so she stands into it.
Sex with it.
So she stands in it and releases two of her tails from her eyes to connect, and she stands in there.
Real quickly, Sparkz, real quickly, I want to pause you for a second. Can you repeat that sentence?
Yeah.
She releases two tails from her eyes.
Okay, now tell me, a year ago when we saw the trailer for the show, did you think you'd say that sentence?
I mean, I didn't think I'd say that sentence, but I'm sure I was going to say weird shit.
It's just wild. The show is wild to me. It's an incredible show that they just go for it. They just go for it.
Yes, they do, for sure. Letty is continuing.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you again. Can we imagine? Can you just imagine writing that in the script, and then Gia gets in between the black cloud of smoke coming out of Atticus's body and shoots tails out of her eyes?
It must have been very fun to write.
Yeah.
I would love to write some shit like that.
You can. Doesn't stop.
Let me rephrase before to get paid to write shit like that.
Sure, I get you. Letty continues to chant. We see flashes of how both sides prepared for the night. This includes the baptism.
Because we're seeing it through Gia's visions.
Gia, which is her connected. So she's connected, I think, to is it Letty or Atticus?
It's Atticus. It's Atticus and Christina.
Yeah. Okay, so Atticus and Christina, and so she's seeing Atticus's and Christina's past.
Yeah,
and I thought this was really cool that Gia was instrumental to this. By the way,
me too.
So we see the baptism. We see Diana getting bonded with the Shoggoth. We see Ruby in a coma.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a specific notes on what else we see, but we see a couple of other
we
flashes.
see specifically when Letty is falling, we see Christina as Ruby chant the invulnerability spell onto Letty.
She just puts it right back on her.
Yeah,
and I'm like, oh, whatever, okay.
And I kind of like that moment. It gives it a sense of like Letty is like, this gets her out of my way, but I don't want to kill her. I promised Ruby I wouldn't hurt her.
Ruby, I wouldn't. Yeah. Wasn't invulnerable for long enough. Didn't see the Gia thing coming.
No.
Sure.
How could you?
Letty reveals that
Gia is the one thing that Atticus has that Christina can't account for. She has no idea who this nine-tailed fox is.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Which you think she would have questioned in the car at some point.
Been like, who's this?
I gotta know this. Yeah. This is a variable.
She's got like a monster.
And I kind of gotta. Yeah. But she's kind of sitting there. You can imagine her sitting there being like, "Does Ruby already know?
Yeah.
Should I ask? I don't know, because I don't know.
Are you magic too? What?
Yeah.
What's your superpower?
It's like totally trying to sprinkle something on her to test her.
I think that's funny. Like they're in the car for 3 hours and never once have a conversation. Like, so what's your name?
Because it'd be weird. Because theoretically, Ruby could already know her, and so she can't push it.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
If they're all that chummy, then Ruby should definitely know who this person is.
Which is also funny because the same thing could be true in the reverse, which I think it is, that Ruby never did meet Gia before, and thus wouldn't know her. And so
they just sing together.
Yeah. Anyway,
there's like the final scene of Christina's.
So we're getting there. Okay. Letty reveals that Christina and every white person in the world has now been bound from magic.
Yes.
They
have taken it back for everyone, but then Montrose, meanwhile, she is crushed under rubble.
Yeah.
What a screw you to Christina. Just like, white people don't get magic anymore.
Yeah. No. Montrose goes to his son.
Oh, geez.
Is helping Gia down because from where she was. They're all comforting Montrose because they know. And he is ignoring the idea that Atticus is dead. He's trying to get him to get up and come with them. And Hippolyta reveals that Atticus wrote a letter for him.
I love the moment with Montrose I love the moment with Montrose, and he's just trying to pick him up, and he's just saying, "Atticus, let's go, come on,
stop, come on, it's done."
That's so sad.
Yeah, because in theoretically his understanding of the version of the plan, Atticus wouldn't have died.
Yeah.
But Atticus believed that he would, and was obviously correct.
Yeah.
So Atticus, we hear Atticus, Jonathan Major's voice reading the letter as we see these final moments. And the part I really want to pinpoint in this letter to Montrose is him saying, look after my son, be a father to him. This is your second chance. Don't waste it. Which I thought was a really beautiful sentiment from him.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really powerful way to do it. It felt earned. It felt executed well. Atticus's passing. They take Atticus's body away from Artem, carrying him on a gurney.
Mm-hmm.
Journey Smollett talks about on the podcast that originally they had like a fake thing there, so it was very light when they were carrying the gurney. And Michael K. Williams, which she said she really appreciated that he did this, Michael K. Williams asked that they do at least one take because they didn't think that all of them could actually carry him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That they do one take where his body is on there, and Journey Smollett said that that's the take that's used. That it changed everything about their demeanor about having to carry his actual weight, which I thought was really nice. Just a nice little fact. And that's where we leave things, except one thing, which is Diana comes up with her Shoggoth companion, and approaches Christina, who's asking her for help. And Diana says, "You still don't get it," and reveals her robotic arm and chokes Christina to death,
and literally like rips her windpipe,
rips her like larynx out.
Yeah. A little extreme. Maybe, but like she's been through a lot. I get it. She's mad. I'd be mad. I don't know if murder is, well, people get mad.
To be fair, like on the podcast itself, they talk about, that's maybe not the best choice made by Diana.
Yeah.
Like we kind of get it. We don't really feel bad about it.
No,
but it's maybe not the best choice.
Yeah, she's got some rage. Now she's going to be a monster vigilante
if there is a second season, which at this point I hope there is.
Misha Green has said that there are plans.
Oh, good.
So one would have to imagine that as long as HBO is willing to put it up, they have an intention about what they want to do. They want to go further into the world beyond. This will be beyond the book, beyond into their own thing.
One of the interviews, it might be the same interview just from IGN, but she said like the season 2 would explore more worlds that Black people haven't been a part of. Like literally like other types of magical fantasy stuff that Black people don't have representation in.
Yeah, just to further allow them to step into narratives where they have not been allowed to be major players.
Yeah. Anyway, so what I was saying was I think that should there be a season 2, I think they will want to go into Diana's decision to kill Christina.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm sure she'll have her own agenda. Like, all right, so like, what can I do now to stop this from happening to other people or something like that?
Because she likes having that Shoggoth around.
Yeah, she does. And the Shoggoth likes her, apparently.
Yeah.
And also, how much exploration will there be of how people feel about killing Christina in general, knowing that Christina didn't kill Ruby and knowing that Christina saved Letty.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And again, like...
Granted, still killed Atticus.
No, yeah, but... also, like, Atticus fully chose this, and like she was willing to do other things, but like, and again, this is not me condoning her wanting to murder him, but that dude was totally like, I want to do this. So she wasn't. I mean, this goes back to I think something we discussed earlier when we were discussing the show in earlier episodes was at what point do you allow your violent acts to make you the monster over the monsters that you're afraid of, or the monsters that pursue you and hurt you. And this would be a similar question, especially in regards to Diana. Yeah.
At what point are you becoming the monster?
I do want to say real quick. I think this season was incredible. It's really dope. I do think the finale was the weakest episode.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the lore dump of the first chunk of the episode is very dense and hard to take in and a little rushed. And I would agree and say that I think that like between episode 9 and 10, I could have used a buffer episode of extra material.
Because like I am 100%. I love the idea of like, we're taking magic away from white people, but that's something that was introduced like in this episode.
Yeah.
And that was just something like, hey, we have a plan that we're gonna do, and then just at the end we did it. I'm like, theirs wasn't enough setup for me to make that seem powerful.
I think the back half of the season, outside of the Rewind 1921 episode, is actually weaker than the first half. I think the first 5 episodes are a lot stronger than the last 5 episodes, with the exception of the Rewind 1921. That is not to say that I think there is in fact a bad episode. I think the entire series is incredible.
Yeah, I was just like, I found most of these episodes like much like Watchmen. Like, wow, this was a 10 out of 10 baller episode, and this finale was like, that was a pretty good episode. Like the quality level is so high. Like I just think like they needed at least one more episode just to really flesh out some stuff. It felt very info dumpy the first half of the episode.
Yeah, I felt the same way about the episode where Hippolyta goes to the multiverse.
Yeah,
I felt like that whole sequence should have been an episode. Should have been split. The whole episode should have been split into 2.
Yeah, I would have just loved the whole episode of that crazy stuff. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Again, that's not me being. I just think like a really great season, pretty good finale.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
Yeah, I think that there's, I do not think, although we will sing the praises of Lovecraft Country pretty hardcore, I do not think it is a flawless show. I don't even think Misha Green would say
Lovecraft
that. Considering that Misha Green has already admitted that she feels the handling of Yahima was a failure on her part. Yes. Yeah. Was a failure on her part, and that she needs to acknowledge that and own up to it and work to be better.
Hey man,
which I think is very respectable that she very blatantly said, I think we did that wrong. I think we did that poorly.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing, because also like looking back on the season, I'm like, that character did get brushed out real fast.
Didn't do really anything.
Yeah.
Like introduced and kind of killed.
Because I remember like when we were back in that episode, I was like, I felt like something about that would come back around. We would see flashback, vision, something about that character, but we never did, which did make it feel like, yeah, that was handled not great.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I totally agree with that. I feel like that character was mishandled.
Yeah, no, I just thought you were about to say a different thing.
Nope.
Oh, okay. You did the breath like when you usually are about to say something.
Did I do the Shatner breath?
Yeah, yeah, I think overall, like the bullet points of what the finale are, I think are super good.
Yeah. And all like the emotional stuff still really works.
Yeah, it's just like you got a fantastic cast. It's just how it's the pacing.
Yeah.
You know what it is? It's just the pacing of the second half of the season, specifically the last episode.
I feel
is very off.
I didn't feel like any other. I mean, there has been lots of like plot exposition stuff, but I never felt any of their other episodes were as heavy as this episode felt.
To be honest with you, I wish, and it's gonna sound maybe a little dumb, but I kind of wish there had been an episode that was really like we've talked about how kind of every character at one point got an episode that was more or less about them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Except Christina.
Yeah.
And I kind of wish, especially now that she's dead, that Christina had an episode.
Yeah.
That was actually just about her. And I kind of understand why that isn't there, because this is a story about Black characters. This is a story about Black people.
She's also kind of
this is their thing, and she's very present and around. But I would be lying, especially with all the things we've talked about like the hints at how good-natured a lot of the things she does are, that that character didn't feel underexplored in some way.
Yeah, if we could have got some more stuff like about her and the stuff with William and like her relationship with her family and why she has motivations.
Or honestly, even still her relationship with Ruby.
Yeah.
Like I would say, like I do, like, again, I kind of sit on a different perspective from Ashley C. Ford on the podcast about Christina's attempt to understand what happened to Emmett Till. Mm-hmm. And I kind of am bummed that no further development of that moment for Christina ever happened. Not necessarily that she had to tell Ruby she did that, but that didn't alter something in her visibly about what her character arc was from that point forward.
Which makes me wonder if the scene that we're reading isn't the way that we're reading it.
Maybe. Yeah. But I mean, like, even with that's the thing, is like, I would agree with you if there weren't all these other things that speak to this idea. Christina protecting Letty, Christina not killing Ruby, Christina doing, like, Christina has a track record of doing these nice things. Showing some amount, again, saying, give me the book of names. This doesn't have to end this way.
Yeah.
And I do agree with Brandon. I think that is a sincere offer. I do not think any time Christina has lied about what she would do.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
And I think she truly would have left Atticus alone, left the family alone, let that autumnal equinox pass and not killed him.
Yeah.
And so I do think, like, it it would have been worth maybe not an episode dedicated to her, but certainly another episode of the show where there's a lot more scenes added for her character growth to be explored, for her depth of personality to be explored, because she's so openly acknowledges so many things changing her. Ruby is a variable that changed my plan. I genuinely care about her. I love her. She all but says it. It's there.
Yeah.
So knowing that she's dead makes me wish we'd had that more.
I also think we talked about it a little bit, but the moment where Christina kisses Ruby, I think that is her truly opening up. Like, this is the actual me showing you that I like you by kissing you. And I'm like, she did care about her.
Important to know that Ruby's the person who really initiates that kiss too, because Ruby has never kissed her as her, and so that was kind of, which is it's a tainted moment in a sense, because you get the impression now looking back that that's Ruby taking advantage of her trust and using that moment because she was trying to get that vial.
Using each other,
which is a bummer. Whereas Christina probably took that as a genuine moment of you love me for me, and really me, wholly me. I just do think that she's a solid character that was just not as well explored as all the other characters. Which again, acknowledging blatantly she is the white antagonist of the show. I understand that that's a little weird to request in a show that is about black characters, black heroes.
But I still think at the same time, it's not unreasonable to ask for better motivations for your antagonist.
I mean, it's not even necessarily the motivations of her. It's just wanting to know, like, wanting to see more of what was going on for that character, what she was going through, how she was being affected by the things happening to her, rather than her kind of only getting to give us nuggets and stay on the sideline.
I want a full meal, not a nugget.
That would be my other big thing. But that's only because I think everyone else is so well treated and well handled, and I'm like, she feels like a blind spot.
I hope season 2 happens, because
I'm sure it will, and I'm very happy about it. I think that this show is great. I can't wait to watch more.
It's doing very well.
I remember what Misha Green was going to say. Because the show was being written over the course of 3 years, they had no idea that the political climate that the show was going to be released in, and how, like, in a sense, the things they are speaking to are timeless, especially for Black people, and that's totally understandable. But it is very much, I think it's great that something like this is out now, because it is very much speaking to a moment when there is a big audience trying to listen. And I think that's awesome.
The audience is there for it.
Yeah. That was the point I was trying to think of way back 40 minutes ago.
You got there eventually.
I did. I'm glad I thought of it before that we were done. A lot of good stuff. Very, very few things that I want changed. Christina's like the biggest. Again, I think adding that time for Christina also would have fixed a lot of our pacing problems, because in doing that, you would have to give some time to these other things we were discussing. So I think maybe just an 11 episode season would have been preferable.
Like, honestly, it was just this last episode where I was like, it felt like just a lot of stuff crammed in one episode.
Yeah, for sure. Hannah and Hattie kind of fly by.
I would love to have spent more time with them. Yeah,
for sure. But overall, from where we started to where we got to, really enjoyed the journey.
Heck yeah. And I can't wait to read the book and see the differences.
God, I hope please keep Jia around for the next season, because she's so good. I'm so happy for Jamie Chung having a role like this.
I just want Jamie Chung to always be successful.
I am glad in many ways that Journey Smollett gets to be kind of the hero of the show. I think that's really awesome. Her and Atticus, their relationship just works really well.
Leticus.
Leticus.
Okay. That's it.
I think we did it.
We did. That's a whole season, baby.
That is Lovecraft Country. This whole thing was a little bit longer than the entirety of the Boys season long discussion. There's more to discuss, I think, in Lovecraft Country than The Boys. No disrespect to The Boys intended.
I mean, it's also just, when we know we're going in for a season general overall discussion, we have to trim down. Lovecraft, we very much is one of those shows where we decided pretty early on we were going to go scene by scene and really try and think about what we were seeing. I still think like we could have supplied more analysis in some places, but it is what it is. Before we're gone, I still highly recommend, even if you haven't yet, go check out the official podcast. There's a ton of great things in there. Not only are there great things about the show and what was happening in that during the time, all of them have fantastic recommendations about other materials that you can consume, movies, television shows, and literature, music that you should check out to further expand your Lovecraft Country horizons, to learn more about Black culture, to appreciate more about Black culture. So please check those things out.
So just to tie this in real quickly to our main show, the Fake Nerd Podcast, which we've been doing live quarantine casts on YouTube every Sunday. We have a pretty significant running theme since the whole Black Lives Matter movement really took off, that we have been celebrating and showcasing Black stories. And then for this October, Black horror specifically. So we talked about Vampires versus the Bronx, and we talked about Attack the Block. The Attack the Block episode is up now. And you can also check out our upcoming episode, which will be about the original Candyman with Tony Todd.
Yep. Also, our Vampires versus Bronx episodes, our book club for that episode is Victor LaVelle's Destroyer, which is very much a Black horror comic following in the steps of the Frankenstein novel.
Very good.
We are, look, hey, we're white, but we're trying to do our part.
Yeah.
Trying to showcase some things that we like, some things that people may not be looking at, but might be looking for. So,
and because this is Lovecraft Country, our last episode of October, really it's dropping November 1st, but like our last Black horror film we're talking about is His House, which is showing up on Netflix and features the actress who played Ruby in Lovecraft Country. So definitely check that out.
We ended up doing Too New and Too Old for our podcast this week. So definitely check those out. You can also check out our other Fake Nerd Watch after shows. If you want more of us doing this, we have plenty of shows. We did Watchmen. We did Swamp Thing. We have The Boys coming up. We did The Boys Season 1 last year. We got The Boys Season 2 coming this week.
Game of Thrones?
The Mandalorian Season 2 is coming, and it is our next Fake Nerds Watch bi-weekly show. And we did Season 1 last time, so you can check that out if you're revisiting Mandalorian.
You know what's amazing? Once the Mandalorian's over, you know what's probably coming out right after that? WandaVision.
Oh, baby.
Yeah.
I think it might even be in the middle of it.
You think so?
It's possible.
It's after November, December.
Depending on how many episodes are in the Mandalorian, I think it could overlap.
I think it's 8 again.
That's so exciting.
And WandaVision supposedly is dropping before the end of the year, and since it's the start date is the end of October.
Since it's November almost.
I think WandaVision is dropping in the midst of that. So we're gonna have some stuff happening, because WandaVision is definitely coming to Fake Nerds Watch.
Yes, absolutely. Our first Marvel Cinematic Universe property to Fake Nerd Watch. We also have the Basement Arcade series, which are Let's Play playthroughs. We got Dead Space up now.
Yes.
There will be more spooky Basement Arcades coming out throughout the rest of the month.
Yeah, we kind of had to cram all our spooky Basement Arcade into the end of the month, but there are quite a couple cool little videos coming out.
I'm still excited to play one of them that we haven't done yet. Yeah, because I really want to scare Ben.
Woo!
And then we have our Fake Nerd Book Club series, which is our freshman series. This is a series where we talk about comic books, series at a time. We got one more episode of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. We've been doing that one for a while. So we got one more coming up. So check that out soon. That'll be up in a couple weeks. That one's more lax than our other shows. We try not to be too strict about that one. Okay, that'll be it then. That's everything, right? Yeah.
Yes.
You can find us on FakeNerdPodcast.com or Fake Nerd Podcast on all the socials. I'm a BT McClure on Instagram and Twitter. Sparkz?
You can find me just wanting to check out even more of the things that inspired Lovecraft Country at Sparkz Witty on Instagram and Twitter, SPARKZ Witty.
Ryan?
Hey, you can find me at DJ Tony Snark everywhere. Keep it spooky, y'all.
All right, guys. Until next week. Make sure to like and subscribe this. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel. I always forget to do that. Do the like, guys. Click that like button. Subscribe to this channel. Until next time, stay fake.